So, TheNudgers, we moved to Toronto almost 4 years ago now. And I don't know about them, but for me, it was really the first time I actually had complete control over my spending habits. So often I'd find myself walking into Eaton Centre after getting my allowance from my parents and spending it on absolutely anything. I would go into a store, buy some shoes that I don't really need, maybe spend three times on takeout. And even today, I came in an Uber just to prove a point that it is 5 minutes away, but I'll still spend lavishly. So with that point made, we went through some customer discovery interviews. And what we learned is that people are more inclined to dissave than to save. And that speaks volumes as to the kinds of financial innovation and the products that come out of it and what they do to us. Most of them, they nudge just to spend and to spend impulsively. But none of them really nudge us towards better financial health through savings and other techniques. So I have a quick question for the audience. I hope I get some responses. How many here uses credit cards regularly? How many of you save regularly? Okay, that's good. Okay, that's fine. So, it makes sense. But if we look at how we spend, how we save today, just like my will to save, piggy banks are fragile, and money under the mattress is no good. You can always reach for that. So the solution we found was not ours. It's something that's been in practice for really long. Housewives in the Middle East, certain parts of Latin America, and in some parts of Asia, they developed this technique of collective saving. So to better portray the example, let's go through this. So the four nudgers, the handsome nudgers, as we like to call ourselves, we each have different goals, and we discuss amongst each other the turns in which we get to claim the pot. So what happens is, at the beginning of every month, this happens. The four of us pay, and Bassam gets to buy his PS4. The next month, this happens. I buy my Nintendo Switch. The month after that, Hammam gets his nice tailored suit, and after that, Ali gets to watch the Raptors win the championship. Talk about ambitious. More about the product and how it works with Bassam.
So now that we have this cool insight on how families, relatives, and loved ones save overseas, we want to take it a step further. So what Bishir explained in the previous slide, we decided to take it and, like any undergrad with a cool idea, make an app. And we were really psyched about the idea, and we called the app Tanda. So the application itself, it starts off by creating a very unique profile for each user. Unfortunately, we didn't have the time to run our prototype with some testers, so we're going to use Bruce Wayne for these purposes, aka Batman. So how it works. Bruce is able to visualize his income and liability streams in the future. How so? Bruce is able to input his financial data into the application, allow the application to slice and dice that data and spit out graphs and charts, allowing Bruce to see exactly where in the future he might need the extra cash. And moving forward, Bruce will have the opportunity to invite his family and friends to join his setup Tanda. We probably shouldn't mention the family part to Bruce because he's very sensitive about that. But Bruce himself Bruce and his teammates on the Tanda will be able to pay and collect via our Tanda in real time. In a sense, all of them will be in the Tanda working together to reach their financial goals. Late payers will be notified of their lateness, and defaulters will also be dealt with in the same way. Users who are late or defaulting would be reluctant to do so. In a sense, you do not want to go ahead and default on your family, friends, and loved ones. You want to avoid the awkwardness, tackiness, and uncomfort of defaulting on those people. This really drives back the point of the psychological effect that we have incorporated within the app to allow the users to be very committed towards the Tanda that they put themselves into. Now that we have this cool idea, this cool insight on savings, and we made the app, what's next? We need to come up with the right market that would best utilize our idea. So, like Bishir mentioned, we grew up in the Middle East, and we've actually seen variations of this Tanda manifest itself within our family, relatives, and even in some departments of companies. They'd save together and reach their financial goals. So the Middle East would really embrace the idea or our take on collective savings. In a sense, the rapidly growing emerging market would embrace this idea with open arms. It's already existing there. And in a sense, at the same time, unlike other regions, the Middle East pushes towards financial solutions that are interest-free. Thus, it will allow us to incorporate ourselves nicely within the region. Aside from that, statistics show that the region is ready for fintech solutions, and digitized solutions for finance are becoming increasingly popular in the region, creating a wave for our Tanda to ride on towards success. Some of the challenges that we might run into, and we should address these challenges before moving in full throttle with the application and the platform. Late payments, that's the number one. We need to deal with those who are late on their payments. Second, retaining users. In a sense, how can we assure ourselves that those who go from the offline Tanda that's existing in the Middle East, as I've mentioned, to the online Tanda, do not go back. And third, last but not least, is managing default risk, which is the most prominent of the challenges. So how are we going to do it? We don't have time for this one. What we're looking into. So we're lucky to live in a time and age where innovation and tech are the buzzwords of our society. The innovation trend and the technological trend is the way we're going to leverage how we're going to overcome the hurdles that I just mentioned. In a sense, machine learning equipped with data accumulation, the sheer data that we're going to collect from the Tanda, would allow us to better mitigate default risk, anticipate it, and build a state-of-the-art in-app credit score. Second, we're going to hone the powerful tool of the internet to propel our idea or our product across geographical borders, allowing us to eradicate the problem of retaining users. In a sense, we're going to have more global base. Last but not least, blockchain technologies coupled with smart contracts would allow us to better deal with late payers and at the same time allowing us to run our Tanda smoothly. Thank you for listening, and now we're going to open the floor to questions and answers, and we're going to invite the remaining team members to better answer your questions. No questions?
So, thanks. So as a father of two young children at home, really worried me that the first two ventures pitching are both about poor impulse control of money and the need to be guilted into controlling your impulse. So I think I understand the Tanda concept because you mentioned Asia. It's like the money association, right? With the non-interest bearing, right? So, but what is the size of the opportunity here? And what would your opening market gambit be?
A piece of research about the global savings market size reaches almost 8 billion, but that's too ambitious. Our goals for the first 2 years, once we launch, like year 1 and 2, is to reach 40,000 users. And during our customer discovery interviews, we saw serious interest because this is something that already happens. So just having it digitized might unlock some of the tackiness of going up to someone and be like, yeah, I kind of need the money now. And yeah, you just mitigate that. So yeah, if it answers your question.
And at the same time, the concept already exists in the Middle East, the region itself. So it's very popular and people do trust the concept of the Tanda. So we're just adding the cherry on top by digitizing and then moving forward globally by scaling bit by bit and using that region as a pilot of our success.
Right. And so do you see the ethnic or demographic scope of this as a booster to your success? In other words, you have a captive audience who understands and how it operates, or do you think that's going to be a limiting factor?
It is a limiting factor to start with, because if I was to do this in Canada, I would have to educate the people, so to speak, about the concept itself. And one thing I see in the North American market in specific, and even in Europe, but not so much in the Middle East, is that people really care about the return on the savings, because you don't just put money and wait for it to wither away over time. But the concept is not that much of a problem for people in the Middle East. So because of that, we would start there, introduce the concept that it's digitized, and see how that works. If the model proves itself successful, we would look for avenues where you can implement that in a place where you can at least explain the concept and have people comfortable with that idea.
Okay. Thank you.
Of course.
Two things. The first one is if you guys think that this is such a prominent concept in the Middle East, are you a little worried about competition, considering it's a digital movement? And the second, you skipped through the one slide. I'm wondering if you guys want to take the opportunity to actually explain what that was, because it looked kind of interesting.
His question was kind of about this. It's that the concept exists offline. It's just digitizing it. Here, you'd have to introduce the concept and then just use the digitization process. And for the first question about the competition, there are actually several competitors that are considering this market, especially in Jordan, because it's now moving more towards startup solutions. So as to the competition, when I met with people that have met with them, potential investors, their value proposition is more about the public Tanda, so to speak, as in, I don't join friends together. I join people from wherever together. And when you open that door, it's a Pandora's box, because how can I make sure that someone that lives 300 kilometers or whatever away from me, how can I ensure that that payment is received? And for me as a company to hold that and that liability is a challenge. And I've seen it in several of their value propositions.
And just to add on that, Islamic banks offer like potential saving solutions with no interest. However, like where we diversify from them is both from one, offering collaboration with friends and family that would allow better psychological effect for saving, and two, on the digitization. So surveys have shown that more than 78% of the customers of Islamic banks are willing to switch to another bank just for more digital solution.
How do you make money?
That's a good question. That is the most important one. There is a platform fee. Now, the platform fee to begin with is, right now it's around 2.8%. And the way we came up with that number, first of all, we benchmarked on the personal loans. In Jordan, the personal loans go from 8 to almost 12%. That's already high. And people have a general aversion to banks because some view them as haram or whatever you would call it for the interest. In the future, part of the transaction fee, we hope, like if it reaches 3 to 3.8%, part of it would go into a default fund in case we decide on going public. That way you'd have the funds in case someone defaults, Tanda could step in, make sure that whoever gets the payout gets the full amount, and then proceed collecting from whoever defaulted.
So your fee would take, with your fee, you would take the risk of participants not paying their share.
Once we decide to go public, once we decide to go public, because when it's between friends, there is, because this practice has been there, we've seen it being successful, that people don't generally default in these things. So because we can mitigate the default through that kind of side, we didn't see any reason for us to grow that default fund. But as we work and we grow the default fund sufficiently, because 1.8% is not that much, especially on these small incremental amounts. But once it grows large enough for us to be confident that it can cover any default, we would go ahead and start public handles.
We have time for one last quick question.
Is there a risk that by digitizing the relationship between people, you actually reduce their commitment to that? So now I just deal with an app, and it doesn't really matter.
There is an app called Money Fellows. Its pilot was in Egypt. And the problem with it is just that. It kind of gives them that sense that this is more of a game than real life. So when I open my TD app, I don't look at it and think like this is a game. I think about it seriously. And when you see that other people depend on your healthy habits of saving, you'd be more obligated to do that. But Sam touched on an idea that we have this push notification where you get a notification that you're late on your payment, and everyone else in your Tanda gets that notification that you've been notified. So by doing that, you just feel that awkwardness, like I don't want everyone to know that I defaulted. So through that collective pressure, we would be able to ease that problem.
All right, thank you very much, Nudgers. Oh, handsome Nudgers.